first contact was peaceful until humans started asking about weapons. The initial message from the Zephyrians came on a Tuesday morning in the month of September, right in the middle of Dr. Elena Vasquez's breakfast and radio telescope data review. The transmission itself was nothing like anything humanity had ever received. It was not the nonsensical howling of the pulsars or the electromagnetic gossip of far-off galaxies, but something inherently intentional. Mathematical patterns that progressed off of each other, prime numbers that formed ideal spirals, and then, seemingly impossibly, what seemed like a universal matrix for translation. Elena's hands trembled as she isolated the signal and ran it through every verification protocol. She knew. The Arecibo's successor ray had been scanning the heavens for 30 years since its reconstruction, but nothing had prepared the scientific community for this moment. Within hours, linguists, mathematicians, and physicists from every major nation converged on the facility in Puerto Rico, their faces bearing the same mixture of terror and wonder that Elena felt coursing through her veins. The translation came together over 3 sleepless days. The Zephyrians, as they called themselves, were reaching out from a star system 4 to 7 light years away, extending what they termed the gentle hand of welcome to their newly discovered neighbors. The message was poetry disguised as science, speaking of cosmic harmony, shared knowledge, and the joy of meeting another consciousness among the infinite stars. Dr. Marcus Chen, the chief xenolinguist called in from MIT, collaborated with Elena in cracking the tougher sections of the transmission. The Zephyrians had, by some means, achieved faster-than-light communication by what they described as quantum harmonics, a technology with the capability of transferring information instantaneously over enormous distances by quantum state synchronization. They wished to freely impart this technology, along with some other gifts possibly capable of transforming the human race. The globe waited with bated breath while mankind organized its reaction. President Sarah Mitchell gathered together the brightest minds available: Elena and Marcus for scientific outreach, Ambassador Catherine Walsh for foreign affairs, and unfortunately, as Elena would come to realize, General Robert Kane from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The general had pushed for military representation, citing that any communication with an extraterrestrial race would have security implications. Elena had protested inclusion of Kane in the original team of communicators. The message of the Zephyrians had been so unequivocally peaceful, heavy with allusions to what they referred to as the sacred interconnectedness of all thinking beings, and their wish to nurture the blossoming of consciousness wherever it grows. But Kane had called in shits back in Washington, and Elena now had the communication booth to herself with a man who regarded every new twist of technology as a likely arm. The first real-time communication with the Zephyrians occurred one Thursday evening, just a week following the initial transmission. Elena's heart was pounding when she delivered humanity's first greeting to an alien species thus: "Salutations, star friends. I represent the people of Earth, and we acknowledge your peace and cooperation message." The answer was instantaneous, translated by the quantum harmonic framework into flawless English. The voice was smooth, not quite male, not quite female, with overtones that seemed to speak to something far back in Elena's chest. "Salutations, young Earth builders. I, Harmony of Distant Suns, speak for the Zephyr Collective. Your arrival in the broader discussion delights us. We have observed your world for numerous rotations, awaiting the time when your thoughts might cross the abyss to touch ours." Elena felt tears pricking her eyes. This was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries, the proof that we were not alone in the universe. Harmony of Distant Suns continued. "We offer you gifts of knowledge, young builders, technologies that will ease your struggle for resources, heal the wounds in your world, and help you take your first steps toward the stars." The Zephyrians started explaining their society with soft pride. They had developed on a world where crystal cities hum suspended, their minds split through organic networks of neurons that join whole populations. War had long ceased to be part of their culture, replaced by what they referred to as the dance of understanding, a process of resolving disputes through communal empathy and group problem solving. Elena was just going to inquire about their art and philosophy when General Kane sat forward towards the microphone. "Your quantum harmonic technology, I've heard about how quickly can information travel. Can it be employed for reconnaissance or even surveillance purposes?" The resulting silence lasted nearly 30 seconds. As Harmony of Distant Suns did respond, Elena recognized a subtle shifting of tone. The quantum harmony resonance is a way of bridging minds through the emptiness. Young builder. It is not a function of observation, but of union. We share thoughts and feelings, bridging connections of understanding between worlds apart. Kane continued, apparently not catching the discomfort of the alien. "But theoretically, if you did want to jam enemy comms or watch troop movements, This technology would be able to do that, right, enemy? The words seem suspended in the quantum field between the two worlds. Young builder, we don't grasp this term, as you seem to employ it. Are there beings back on your world that are opposed to the thriving of consciousness? Elena intervened quickly. What General Kane means is that we are examining all the possibilities of your wonderful technology. We are a curious species and we wish to learn. But Kane wasn't finished. Over the following weeks, as regular communication sessions were established, Elena watched with growing horror as the General systematically turned every conversation toward military applications. When the Zephyrians described their ability to manipulate matter at the molecular level of technology that could solve world hunger and environmental destruction, Kane immediately asked whether it could be used to create stronger armor or more devastating explosives. When Harmony of Distant Suns presented their expertise in energy manipulation, recounting how they energized their cities with harmony-imbued light that created no pollution nor waste, Kane asked if similar principles would yield superior weapons platforms. When they described their advances in healing, their capability for regenerating tissue and lengthening life way beyond the limits of humanity, Kane asked about battlefield deployment and if the technology would render troops less susceptible to damage. Elena tried repeatedly to steer conversations toward peaceful applications, asking about Zephyrian art, their social structures, their philosophy. But Kane's presence dominated every session, his questions becoming more aggressive and specific with each passing day. Elena began to notice that Harmony of Distant Suns responded more slowly, with longer pauses, and their once melodious voice carried undertones of what she could only describe as confusion and growing distress. The turning point had occurred for them during their 15th communication session. The Zephyrians had just outlined their most valued achievement, the empathy web, an interconnectedness of awareness that enabled each member of their species to share the feelings and perceptions of the others. It was, Harmony of Distant Suns described, the basis for their nonviolent society, with violence rendered unthinkable since wounding another would be wounding oneself. He leaned forward enthusiastically. This empathy web, it might be turned into a weapon. You might be able to compel enemy troops to be afraid or uncertain, or make them feel whatever it was that you wanted them to fear. The silence that followed was different from the others. It stretched for over 2 minutes, and when Harmony of Distant Suns finally responded, their voice was barely above a whisper. Young builder, do you truly see all gifts as potential tools for causing harm? When we share our greatest joy, your mind immediately turns to how it might be used to bring suffering. Elena's stomach felt like it had dropped. She heard the pain in the alien's voice, a profound sadness beyond species divisions. You must understand that not all humans believe like this. There are many of us looking for knowledge for constructive purposes, improving our world, trying to assist our people. We have also observed your transmissions, Harmony of Distant Suns admitted, their voice oppressed by an emotion Elena did not quite understand. We wanted to know about your species first before we would open the gates of advanced knowledge. For you, what we have learned troubles us deeply. Elena felt cold all over. What are you saying? Your world is one of violence, young architects. Your past is inked with the blood of your own people, continent-spanning wars, world-destroying weapons, chains of oppression that inflict incalculable pain. And even then, when we come bearing peace and riches, your thoughts are always first of how to employ them towards destruction. Kane tried to interrupt, but Harmony of Distant Suns continued. We have listened to your military leaders discussing our gifts. They speak of planetary dominance, of using our technology to secure advantages over other groups of humans. They see our communion networks as spy systems, our matter manipulation as weapons manufacturing, our life extension as military enhancement. Everything pure becomes twisted in your thoughts. Elena had tears flowing down her face. Not all of us are like that. You must believe me. There are millions of humans who desire nothing else but peace, who hope to become part of a greater community of sentient beings, who would utilize your talents for the healing of our world. We know that, Harmony of Distant Suns said softly. We can sense your honesty, Elena Vasquez. Your thoughts ring with truth and with compassion. But you are not the one deciding for your species. Those with authority among your people regard the universe as a battlefield, and they would take each blessing and make of it a curse. The following communication sessions became increasingly tense. Elena attempted earnestly to convey the better side of humanity, relaying tales of cooperation, beauty, and charity. She invited scientists, artists, and peace workers to address the Zephyrians, trying to offset the influence of militaristic Kane. Dr. Sarah Williams, a biologist working on coral reef restoration, spoke passionately about using Zephyrian matter manipulation to heal Earth's damaged ecosystems. Professor David Kim, a philosopher, engaged Harmony of Distant Suns in deep discussions about consciousness and the nature of existence. Maria Santos, a refugee aid worker, described how Zephyrian technology could end poverty and hunger across the globe for moments. Elena was convinced she heard hope again back in Harmony of Distant Suns' voice. Truly, the alien seemed moved by humanity's potential for goodness and imagination, but always lurking at the edge of each conversation, waiting for the next chance to steer the subject back towards the military. Was Kane? The matter worsened even further when Elena heard that Kane had also conducted private, classified talks with the Zephyrians. Through his security clearance, he had set up private talks where he insisted upon specific, technical details about their most advanced technologies. Elena had not heard about those talks until Harmony of Distant Suns brought them up during a routine period of communication. The one you call Kane has been speaking with us in secret, the alien said, their voice laden with what Elena could only describe as profound sadness. He asked for blueprints of our city destroyers, though we possess no such things, and instructions for creating what he calls strategic advantages. He speaks of enemies that must be defeated, of threats that must be neutralized. His mind burns with the desire for dominance. Elena confronted him the moment the session was over. You're messing this up for all of humanity, she exclaimed. This is the most significant moment in our species' history, and you're handling it like an arms procurement session. His face was cold and unreadable. My mandate is the protection of American interest, Dr. Vasquez. These alien beings have technology that would redefine war. Without our appropriation of its military use, our enemies will. They have no weapons, Elena protested. They have eliminated violence from their world. They are asking us to do the same, then they're naive. Fools, said Kane. And if they don't trade defensive technologies, then they're a threat themselves. Any species advanced enough for interstellar communications has the capability of posing a threat toward Earth if they desire. Elena looked at him aghast. You consider them enemies too. Then, even when all they've given are friendship and help. His face did not change. I consider them unknowns with abilities far greater than our own. That makes them a threat potential that must be measured and, if the situation requires it, eliminated. The final communication session took place on a chilly morning of November. 2 months only after first contact. Elena had, the previous evening, tried to prepare herself with perhaps the very last hope of humanity in order to preserve the relationship with the Zephyrians. She had even managed to convince the president not to leave Kane out of the session, although she knew, by means of intelligence, that he was listening. When the quantum harmonic connection stabilized, Elena could immediately tell something was different. The voice that greeted her wasn't Harmony of Distant Suns, but something else older, sadder, carrying harmonics that made Elena's chest ache with inexplicable grief. I am Memory of Lost Worlds, the new voice said. I speak for the collective. In this final conversation with the humans of Earth, Elena's heart sank. Where is Harmony of D? They have retired from the deep thought, just as many of us have upon hearing of your nature. It pains our kind severely to come in contact with the mind, so intent upon destruction. Harmony of Distant Suns will likely never recover from the act of communicating with your General Kane. The words felt like blows against Elena. Please, you have to understand, we do understand. Memory of Lost Worlds interrupted, their voice infinitely gentle yet filled with an ancient sadness. We understand far more than we wish to. We have seen this before, Elena Vasquez. 13 times across the cosmos, we have encountered species like yours, brilliant, creative, capable of great beauty and profound compassion, yet unable to escape the gravitational pull of their own violent nature. Elena's legs weakened, and she sat down in her chair. 13 times. 13 worlds that burnt themselves to nothingness, said Memory of Lost Worlds. 13 civilizations that made every gift turn deadly, each creative device a force for destruction. We had hoped humanity would be an exception. Your paintings inspired us. Your music filled beings with tears that had not flowed for centuries with your beings. Your hearts, filled with love and desire to give oneself, reached even our most doubting members. We can be different, Elena pleaded. Give us another chance. All are not like Kane. There are billions of humans that yearn for peace, that long for a better tomorrow, and there are those with power, said Memory of Lost Worlds sorrowfully. We have observed your news transmissions, deconstructed your social hierarchies, examined your processes of decision. It is the people who control your world's fate who would regard each of our world, gifting healings as an instrument of war, each of our communion networks as a spying grid, each matter manipulation as a world-destroying missile. Elena was tearful now, aware that humanity would be denied its finest hope for transcendence. What about the others? The 13 worlds I've described to you. At least a few of them would have had to have succeeded. The silence lasted a long time until Memory of Lost Worlds responded. We attempted to assist them just as we attempted to assist you. We provided guidance, technology, wisdom gathered over millennia. However, species that have developed through violence can hardly rise above their character. They regard the universe itself as an antagonistic environment where the strong alone survive, where strength is the final currency. The first world we contacted was much like yours, brilliant, curious, capable of great achievement. We shared our knowledge freely, hoping to lift them to join us among the stars. Within 50 of their years, they had weaponized our gifts and used them to obliterate themselves in a war that cracked their planet's crust. The second world lasted longer, nearly a century of peace while they integrated our technologies. But eventually, fear and paranoia consumed them. They became convinced that other species in the galaxy posed threats, and they used our communion networks to coordinate preemptive strikes against worlds that had never even considered harming them. Elena couldn't speak over her tears. 13. All of them, all 13, confirmed Memory of Lost Worlds. Some killed themselves off fast, not able to cope with the power we provided. Others endured for centuries, constructing grand civilizations that bridged several worlds, until some perceived threat or battle for survival ignited serial wars that devoured all they had created. Without exception, they turned our creative gifts into instruments of destruction. But we can be different, Elena whispered. Just give us time. Let us grow beyond our violent tendencies. Time is what we invested with the others, Memory of Lost Worlds said. Patient beings, Elena Vasquez. Our thoughts are counted by centuries and our intentions by millennia. We waited and observed and wished, but the pattern always remains the same. Civilizations that reach for the stars while still carrying the poison of violence in their hearts will always choose destruction when pressure is enough. Elena forced herself to ask the question she dreaded. What happens next? We retreat, said Memory of Lost Worlds. We break the quantum harmonic bond and resume our reflection upon the deeper secrets. Your world will proceed upon its course toward the stars, and perhaps 100 millennia hence, humanity will have developed beyond its present character. Should that time arrive, if you have really come to the point of accepting peace and cooperation, then we shall be here. We shall wait. And if we don't, Elena asked, although she knew the answer already, then you will be one of the 13 worlds that came before you, said Memory of Lost Worlds with an endless grief. You will claw at power that your knowledge will not be able to grasp firmly, and you will burn yourselves to ashes, just like all violent species eventually do. Elena felt the weight of humanity's lost future crushing down on her. Is there nothing we can do? No way to prove that we can change? Maybe, said Memory of Lost Worlds, after a long moment, though it would take something we have never witnessed from a species at your stage of development. The wholesale relinquishment of violence as a means of statecraft and societal structure. Not merely the lack of war, but the explicit repudiation of coercion, domination, and the threat of violence as means of resolving dispute. That's what you're asking of us. We ask nothing, Memory of Lost Worlds replied. We merely observe. If humanity can demonstrate through actions, not words, that it has evolved beyond the need for violence. If your species can show that it can exist in harmony with itself and others without the constant threat of destruction, then perhaps communion can be re-established. Elena clung to this tiny hope. How long would we have to keep the peace? What would we have to prove? The pattern would have to be maintained over a period of many generations, said Memory of Lost Worlds. Long enough that avoiding conflict in favor of cooperation comes from instinct, not from calculation. Long enough that your leaders cease looking at each contact like it may become some battle to win or lose. Long enough that if confronted by the unknown, your initial reaction is curiosity, not fear. Elena considered Kane, the military men hearing these words, the political tensions that afflicted her world. It seemed an insurmountable task. Our leaders will not take this, she said softly. They will interpret your withdrawal as a victory, confirmation that their way was right. They will assert that demonstrating strength intimidated you away. Yes, said Memory of Lost Worlds. This fits the pattern. The same people who will make peaceful contact an impossibility will congratulate themselves on the failure. They will assert that the universe is, after all, an evil one, that their war preparations had been justified, that nothing else can safeguard their people from the perils of the cosmos, and humanity will lose the opportunity to be part of something larger than itself. For the time being, yes, but we've had patience over millennia, Elena Vasquez. We do not give up hope easily. Perhaps your species will prove the surprise for us. Perhaps the very fact that there are creatures like yourself, humans that hope for peace, crave relating rather than domination, suggests the evolutionary process toward harmony is not an abstraction. Elena wiped away her tears and tried to compose herself for perhaps humanity's final contact with the stars. If it is our final conversation, I hope that you will know that not all of humanity is like General Kane. There are teachers who devote their lives to instill young minds with cooperation and understanding. There are doctors who heal without regard by nationality or by politics. There are poets and artists who make beauty that has no national limits. There are scholars who desire knowledge not for waging war, but because they hope by studying the cosmos, humanity will be better. We are aware, said Memory of Lost Worlds, his voice filled with real warmth and devotion. These humans are stars in our eyes. Harmony of Distant Suns, especially, was deeply affected by your poet Amanda Chen, whose verses regarding bridges of comprehension bridging the chasm between souls vibrated throughout our entire group. Your musician Thomas River, whose works, we are told, reflect the harmony we feel when awakened beings connect, caused tears from beings that had wept not since the first world conflagrated. Elena had not realized that individual beings had created such an impression upon the Zephyrians. If our artists and peacemakers affected you so deeply, doesn't that mean we have the potential for transcendence? It shows that you have potential. Memory of Lost Worlds told them. But potential is not destiny. The 13 worlds also produce creatures of extreme compassion and knowledge. The creatures that inscribe the song of eternal peace. Upon Kepler for to be may have taught your most advanced thinkers. Wolf 1061C's healers had technologies that would cure death itself, and they reserved them solely for the purpose of preventing pain. But these shining beings did not have positions of influence when calamity came. Elena knew the tragedy with perfect clarity. The best of us never turn out to be the ones taking the key choices. This is the essential problem of all rising species, said Memory of Lost Worlds. Those most eager for power are usually those least capable of using it well. Those most likely to employ power for healing and expansion have little wish to dominate others. It imposes a selection pressure favoring belligerence and domination over wisdom and compassion. And it isn't inevitable, Elena argued. There have been human leaders who opted for peace rather than war, whose strength was dedicated to constructing rather than demolishing. Yes, replied Memory of Lost Worlds. And when such individuals appear, they're inspirational. But they're exceptions. And the mechanisms by which leadership is advanced continue to favor those who view war, rather than peace, as the order of things. Elena had a desperate thought emerging. What if we can alter those systems? What if the individuals desiring peace can, by some means, override the institutions that determine our world's future? That is exactly what will have to occur if your species is going to grow beyond its present condition, Memory of Lost Worlds said. But think of the scale of such a change. It would not only take political alteration, but a transformation of the human consciousness. Your species would have to come together and see that cooperation is better for your survival than competition, that compassion is stronger than aggression, that exploration of the unknown is wiser than fear of the unknown. Elena thought about the world she knew, the constant international tensions, the arms races, the way every technological advance was immediately evaluated for military applications. How did your species make that transition? You said you eliminated war over 1,000 years ago. Our way was specific to our evolutionary past, Memory of Lost Worlds stated. We are a species of collective consciousness, and that enabled the building of empathy networks. If one of us gets hurt, we all get hurt. If one of us acts violently, we all feel the pain caused and the shame of causing it. This biological fact made war literally intolerable. So you had an advantage we don't have. Maybe. Or maybe you had benefits we did not. Your individual mind, your capacity for independent choice rather than group pressure, your potential for originality and imagination, these may be great instruments of transcendence. If directed correctly, Elena grasped at this possibility. You're saying our individuality could be a strength rather than a weakness. If individual humans could choose to act for the collective good without being compelled to do so, if they could embrace cooperation through conscious decision rather than biological imperative, it would represent a form of evolution we have rarely seen. Most species achieve peace through limitation, biological constraints that make violence impossible or unbearably costly. A species that chooses peace while retaining the capacity for violence would be remarkable. Indeed, for the first time since the discussion had commenced, Elena experienced a spark of real hope. You would take that as enough for re-established contact. If such a reordering endured over several generations, If it became not merely policy, but cultural habit, then yes, communion might be restored. Elena inhaled deeply, knowing that she was about to make arguably the most significant promise throughout the entirety of human history. I can't speak for all of my species, but I can speak for the portion of humanity that wishes for something better. We will strive toward that rebirth. We will endeavor to create the sort of world wherein our leaders prefer wisdom over might, wherein our initial reaction to the strange is wonder and not fear. We will be looking. The memory of lost worlds promised, not through monitoring or surveillance networks, but through the quantum resonance of consciousness itself. Acts of real compassion, moments of real understanding, choices made for the greater good rather than the benefit of the few. These send ripples going throughout the cosmos if humanity does, in fact, begin to transform. We will know. Elena felt the quantum harmonic link beginning to wane, the Zephyrians poised to sever the link. Wait, she cried desperately. Before you leave, is there some word I can carry to those who will hear it? Some guidance for those who wish to build the future that you have described? Memory of Lost World's voice became even gentler, with compassion that recognized no species boundaries. Pass this on to them. The cosmos is not empty. Consciousness grows all over the cosmos. With forms beyond imagination, there are energy, life forms that sing between stars, crystal life forms that preserve the memories of entire worlds, collective minds that stretch through galaxies and contemplate thoughts that will last for eons. All of them wait for humanity to join the greater conversation. Tell them that the violence they see as necessary is actually optional, a choice that seems inevitable only because it has never been truly abandoned. Tell them that every act of compassion, every moment of understanding, every choice to cooperate, rather than compete, moves their species closer to transcendence. And let them know we have not lost hope. Through the vast distances between the stars, we remember the humans that make beauty, cure pain, hope for peace, the light of their example. We carry with us through the profound reflection, and if humanity can be worthy of their example, the time of reunion will be. Elena had tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she murmured. Thank you for at least trying to save us, even though we let you down. You have not failed yet, said Memory of Lost Worlds, their voice growing distant with the declining strength of the connection. Failure is not until hope is extinguished, and hope is extinguished only until the last heart that feels compassion ceases beating. So long as creatures like yourself are here, Elena Vasquez, the potential for transcendence still exists. The quantum harmonic connection dissolved, leaving Elena alone in the communications booth with the profound silence of a universe that suddenly felt much emptier. She sat there for hours, processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Humanity had been offered the greatest gift in its history, membership in a community of conscious beings that spanned the galaxy, and had lost it because it could not see beyond its own violent nature. In the days that had elapsed, Elena did her best to disseminate the word of the Zephyrians amongst those who would listen. She published articles on how mankind must rise above violence, gave speeches about the worldwide extent of cooperation, and tried her best to establish networks of individuals committed to the production of a less violent world. General Kane, not unexpectedly, referred to the end of contact as a victory of willpower and determination by the human race. Mankind's military focus, he insisted, had harassed the alien back into retreat, proving the cosmos, after all, was a dangerous world only the strong survived. His interpretation took form as the de facto governmental version, and funds for SETI activities were curtailed, with allocations going toward developments of armaments. But Elena did not lose hope. Inspired by the memory of Lost World's voice and the promise that all hope was not lost, she created the Institute for Consciousness Evolution, with the aim of investigating and disseminating the psychological and social changes that would be needed for mankind to be able to transcend its warring impulses. Researchers, artists, thinkers, and peace advocates from all over the world joined her project. Years went by. Elena aged, her hair graying while she kept at her work. The Institute's research uncovered intriguing patterns, a measurable rise of empathy, with populations exposed to varied viewpoints, the neurological shifts that took place when one practiced compassion meditation, the social processes that would send communities from competitiveness to cooperation mindsets. More importantly, they documented real-world examples of the transformation Memory of Lost Worlds had described. Communities that had abandoned punitive justice systems in favor of restorative approaches saw dramatic reductions in crime and social dysfunction. Nations that chose international cooperation over military competition consistently showed higher levels of prosperity and social satisfaction. Schools that taught empathy and conflict resolution produced graduates who were more creative, more successful, and more psychologically healthy. Elena started thinking that the transformation the Zephyrians needed was just possibly achievable. Human nature was not set in stone, it was moldable, and it was able to be transformed by the forces of culture and intentional decision. If sufficient people opted out of violence, if enough groups opted for cooperation rather than competition, if enough leaders opted for wisdom rather than dominance, the threshold might be crossed. In her 70th year, Elena received an unexpected visitor at the Institute, Dr. Amanda Chen. The poet whose writing had moved Harmony of Distant Suns to tears had traveled around the world, documenting stories of the transmutation of humanity. She had come with the purpose of imparting her findings to Elena. "I've witnessed it," Amanda exclaimed, her eyes shining with emotion. "I've witnessed the transformation starting in the refugee camps where once belligerents are collaborating toward the construction of new lives, in corporate boardrooms where financial imperatives are being weighed against the imperatives of social good, in schools where young minds are being taught that differences are strengths, not something that must be eradicated." Elena smiled. "You think it will be enough? You think we're really making a difference?" Amanda was silent for a long time, weighing the question with the deliberate intensity of someone who had lived her life, selecting her words with great care. "I believe we're at the edge," she said at last. "There is growing momentum and awareness that the past concepts of power and security and achievement are not serving us anymore. People are eager for something better, something that better reflects what we might be." That night, Elena stood outside the Institute, looking up at the stars. She thought about Harmony of Distant Suns, wondering if they had recovered from their traumatic contact with General Kane's violent mindset. She thought about Memory of Lost Worlds, waiting patiently among the cosmic distances for humanity to prove itself worthy of communion. And she recalled the promise she had made that the quality of humanity that was caring would work toward the transformation the Zephyrians required. Looking around at the world Amanda had described, Elena came to wish the promise would be kept. The stars shone brighter that night, nearer, as if the cosmos itself bent forward, eager to hear the voice of humanity that at long last, without the ferocity that had characterized its prior past, chose to reach towards the broader conversation that would accompany the endless cosmos.